And we're live. Hey, everybody, it's me, Argent. I'm joined by Charlemagne today. I've been wanting to get more people to come on the channel, do some more collabs, etc. I think there's a need of us to just do more, I think, cross promotion between people in the same sphere. A lot of the kind of cooperation fell apart post Charlottesville and just kind of the mess that was it. So I asked him to come on today, and he's going to tell us the his road to Damascus story, how he became a reactionary, and a bit about his past. And before we get started, Charlemagne, why don't you just tell us a bit about your channel and the kind of content you make? The
Sure.
link is down in the description, and I'll also post in the chat. So please subscribe to him.
All right. Well, thank you. And hello, everybody. This is Charlemagne. And let's see, my channel has kind of come on a journey with me. I started publishing stuff to YouTube, just like gaming videos and stuff, just because that's kind of what people were doing. But I started getting involved in politics because, a lot of crazy stuff started happening, especially in the US. And I felt like I needed to say something about it, really. And eventually I encountered the writings of Mencius Moldbug and other reactionary figures, and really got into that. And now I pretty much only make neo-reactionary content for the time being.
Were you
And
involved in? Oh, sorry, go on.
yeah, right now I guess my main series is actually going over Moldbug's open letter, which I think is really enlightening.
Were you involved in Gamergate at all? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of where it all started for me and a lot of people. I wasn't involved in Gamergate, but I kind of watched it, and it kind of set off some alarms, like what is going on here? This is a really weird event in society that didn't make much sense to me. It's kind of just a normal like nerd who was into video games and stuff. It was strange to see, I guess, my people, my crew, just so attacked by the media. It didn't really make a sense at all, but in hindsight it makes a lot of sense.
Right. It's interesting in my case because I completely missed Gamergate. Like it just I think I was involved in in these circles kind of before Gamergate happened, or it just was not something that ever really interested me. So I kind of missed out on it, even though it was kind of the big thing that set a lot of people um, on this path.
Yeah, I wasn't into politics at all. Like a lot of people before all of this stuff with Trump and everything started happening. I was just kind of a normal default liberal, as Andrew Breitbart would put it. Just played my video games, just wanted to have fun, be left alone, get along with my own life.
There's if you'll forgive me, there's a joke that I had. You can rape my daughters, you can take my country, you can drive my people to extinction. Just don't touch my video games.
Yeah, that's a that's pretty true, and that's it. Kind of felt like that happened. I guess because for millennials who were just coming of age, that was kind of a really important thing to us, a part of our culture, and it really didn't feel good at all to, I guess, be so serially misunderstood and lumped in with this mysterious toxic group of people who, as far as I could tell, didn't really exist. I think that's one of the things that really pissed people off is I don't think I've ever met anyone who's this sort of like toxic gamer, and I think to people who play like shooters and stuff online, it's kind of normal to just be a little mean to each other, but that's just part of the trash talking.
Yeah, that's just part of the culture. I mean, the thing with Gamergate and kind of my thesis as to why it was such a big thing is it was kind of like the last thing heterosexual males had as a safe space.
Pretty much, yeah.
It was kind of the place where they could go. And just talk for a minute. I have a call.
Yeah, and I think it's not even about like only having men there, because obviously, we're happy to have women game with us. It's just it's more of like a masculine culture, a masculine space, and I think it's important that people can have places to embody aspects of their personality. In this case, the masculine. Even if you're sort of an introverted nerd, I would say, especially in that case. Are you there?
Sorry, I just had a call from my work.
I know that's all good.
Yeah, but it was kind of like the one of the like you still had like chicks with big boobs, you had guys with like guns and swords, and it just to me video games were just like one of the last two places where you could feel good about being a male.
Yeah, it was
You
kind
know
of
what I
like
mean?
yeah, just the I guess the sort of things you would see in like 80s movies were still embodied in video game culture. And I always just felt it was fine, you know. I never like played a video game and then like tried to act that out in real life or think badly of women or something like that because of something I saw in a video game. They're just toys, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
It was kind of insulting to people's intelligence as if like we're so stupid and easily manipulated that we're going to play a video game and come out as some horrible human being when, you know, precisely the opposite seems to be the case.
well, I mean, this is a little secret, but people have liked like violent forms of entertainment, and I don't mean like gladiatorial games even, but just like violent stories, etc. I mean, there's lots of that stuff in the Bible. Like, it's not like it's something new that people like that kind of thing, and it's generally regarded as being fairly harmless.
What's really at the core of the human condition, and I mean that's something that every culture deals with is violence, you know,
Mhm.
and it's
Yeah,
something
so
you deal with in games yourself in a very personal level.
I think I was also maybe I was just a bit too old when Gamergate broke. Then again, a lot of people older than me took part in it, so I don't really know. It was just kind of a because I remember when I first started getting these circles, I like you did. I found the Dark Enlightenment stuff, and I wasn't like a huge fan of it. I found it kind of pretentious and hard to follow. Then I got into like old school TRS. Old school TRS is a lot different. I You know who TRS is, right? Or
I don't think so.
the right stuff.
Okay, yeah, I haven't read them.
Okay. I was into like old school TRS before they became like whatever they are nowadays. So I read a lot of that. I watched a lot of, ironically enough, Irini videos back in the day. Um, that's that bridge has officially been burned. But yeah, so that was just kind of my background. So, what was your family like, if you don't mind saying? Like, were they liberal? Were they what was kind of their political?
I would say fairly apolitical. Definitely Christian. You know, I was raised as a Catholic Christian. My mother read me the children's Bible pretty much every night. Me and my brother. Um, I would say I was just generally raised with good values. Nothing liberal or conservative per se was ever really like pushed on me. I would say, uh, you know, my mother educated me very well, um, sent me to good schools, and gave me a Christian education, and that worked out really well, I think.
Yeah, that's yeah, I came from my family went to church. They were kind of, I guess you could say, liberal Christians, but overall, yeah, I had a really good upbringing. I maybe you and I are kind of different in these unique in these circles for not having a chip on on our shoulder about our parents.
Yeah, not at all. I have really good parents, I would say. They did I couldn't really ask for more, to be honest, and I come from a fairly poor background as well. Definitely lower class, which I think helped instill good values as well. A certain appreciation for whatever good things I might come by. You know.
You know, it's interesting. Do you know who Movie Bob is?
Oh yeah, I've seen his stuff.
Okay, Movie Bob. I think what's interesting about him is he is like an SJW, but in a sense, he's kind of based. Like he kind of gets it. So he views the white working class as being his natural enemy.
Hmm.
which is interesting because it is the natural enemy of globalism. But it is something I find. And if we want to kind of gradually move into politics, something I noticed even when I was growing up was economic liberal leftism has largely disappeared from most Western left wing parties, if you know what I mean.
Are you talking more in like a neoliberal sense? Is sort of the order of things now?
Yeah, it's. I find like the idea, like socialism, like the government owning like owning the means of production, or even really in most cases, new welfare programs are just not really seen as a large priority anymore.
Yeah, and that's something that makes me scratch my head. Maybe it really doesn't, but if you look at sort of the mainstream quote unquote right, you see them really mostly complaining about, socialism. And I don't really see that at all as the main concern. And on the left, it seems like this sort of corporate cronyism is really the way of things now. And the left really stopped caring about trying to implement a strict socialist policy.
And as I
It's much more cultural than economic now. I mean,
yeah, because I think what they kind of realized was, like I said, the white working class and just a lot of globalism is generally not in the interest of the lower classes. It's more of a bourgeoisie thing. So like I find in general, and this was kind of something maybe for me, what was bigger, and I don't know, this could just be my age, was Occupy Wall Street. Because I was very supportive of Occupy Wall Street. Because I considered myself a man of the left, but more in kind of like an economic sense. And I remember I supported Obama in part because I thought he would do something about the banksters. But kind of by the end of Occupy Wall Street, I found that Occupy Wall Street, Obama, and most of what I thought was the left were extremely pro bank.
yeah, I became really disillusioned with Obama in the later parts of his presidency. I voted for him in 2012. Yeah, in 2012, I actually voted for Obama just because that's kind of what you do if you're a good person, right? Basically, is you vote for the Democrats.
I actually think it's because I have a friend who Nazbol gang
Yeah, yeah.
who comes on sometimes, and he said if he had have been of age, or if he had have been able voted in that election, he probably would have voted for Obama.
Yeah,
Uh,
I actually voted for McCain the first time I voted, because I would say mostly my Catholic Christian upbringing, but college sort of shifted me to the left as it does, and I ended up in Obama's camp for a year or two. Not that I
no,
was particularly interested in politics.
no, he means today. If he had a
Oh,
choice, he
right
probably,
now.
because he believes that John McCain was a psycho who would have led to a world war.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would probably pick Obama over McCain given the choice right now. I think a lot of us on the reactionary right, especially, kind of realize that the Republican Democrat thing is kind of a false choice anyway.
See, the thing is, coming from Canada, it doesn't
Oh, right, you're
to me.
Canadian.
Um, your Republican Party is okay. Let me just give a bit of context because context. It's considered an extreme right wing position in Canada to not to want to let people immigrate who have pictures of themselves holding ISIS flags on their Facebooks.
Yeah, I watched I think it was your video on why you don't really talk about Canada and don't really have any hope for Canada
Yeah.
because it's kind of just gone total clown world over there. So I could see that perspective.
So, like, you will actually have Republicans who are pro life, which is something you just wouldn't have in Canada. Um, you'll have Republicans who are like openly nationalistic or are call for immigration restrictions, or just a number of things that are just not permitted to be talked about. Um, okay, anti-troll in the chat is asking, isn't being a member of ISIS a security breach? No, it isn't. It's actually the Conservative Party here had to pass a bill stating the prosecute people who are members of ISIS Act, where like they basically are in a campaign to try to force the government to prosecute members of ISIS. Of the like, I think it's like 500 or so. It's some really high number. They've prosecuted 4 of them and only convicted 2 of them. is what it's like in this country. So it's kind of funny. I guess it's a grass is greener thing because I have a viewer from Poland, and he always talks about how paused Poland is. But I guess to you or me, Poland seems like the most base country on earth.
Yeah, pretty much. And well, I mean, the grass really is greener over here, I would say, but it's still got a tinge of brown to it. Um, and yeah, I definitely would have a preference and do have a preference for Republicans over Democrats. I'm just thinking more of in like a inner party versus outer party sense. You know, we've kind of realized that voting for Republicans doesn't really do much for us. It at best sort of slows things down, and Trump changes the game up a little bit. But I think he's more of a roadblock than anything.
I mean, and this is kind of I think one of the biggest debates in our circles, if I can say that, is accelerationism versus non-accelerationism. If
Hmm.
like
I
because
see
some
that a
people
lot. Yeah.
because some people say, oh, it's better if we just had a massive number of Muslims come in because that would destabilize society and that would wake people up. Whereas there's other people who will say, look, there's nothing we can do, so we can at least try to elect the party that'll enforce criminal laws.
To me, it seems just evil to enact evil on purpose for the sake of hopefully getting some good outcome in the future. I just can't see myself intentionally trying to destroy my society even faster to wake people up or something. You know, accelerationists don't even seem to agree on what they're accelerating towards.
What it is, and this is they're people who've kind of given up. And something I think is people don't really fear, I think, millenarianism or the apocalypse. If anything, they're disappointed when it doesn't happen because they want something to kind of free them from their monotonous, meaningless existence. To
Hmm.
give them something. Also, it's at this point in time, they see everything working against them. So they kind of feel like a divine intervention is pretty much all they have left. It's the only remaining hope.
Yeah, and I guess the sort of you know, apocalypse porn movie is pretty popular now. I mean, I watched one the other day. Like for some reason the end of the world is just really interesting. I guess because life has kind of just become so mundane, routine, and you know, everyone just works for some corporation and their lives are pretty uninteresting. So, you know, even myself, I could see that pull. And if you're involved in politics, I could see, especially reactionary politics, I could see wanting to bring that on just for the sake of having something interesting happen.
Yeah, it's something I think, and we'll get into your journey in a minute. But one of the things that really kind of set me down this path was noticing that no one really seems happy with the utopia we've built. Like
Hmm.
basically, the left got everything that they could have dreamed of. Um, we have all these equality, we have all these programs, etc. We have feminism, and suicide rates are up, drug rates are up. People are not happy with the brave new world at all.
I see the exact same thing myself. It just seems like everyone is at the very least secretly miserable or just openly miserable with life. You know, I noticed some people claim to get some sort of value out of like just doing their job and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think most people don't really feel like their life has much meaning or purpose anymore.
Right. So why don't we just when we get to the main event? So you said you were raised in kind of a de facto liberal environment. So you said you had gone to university. Would did that what how did that affect you politically?
I think it just sort of brought me to the left a little bit, made me somewhat progressive. I was never like into social justice or anything like that. The university I went to was mostly a commuter school with a lot of older people, so I didn't have a whole lot of political exposure.
Right.
But just you know, the students kind of pulled me more to the left because you know I had friends who were a little bit more into politics and a little bit more left than me, so you kind of just go with the flow. And this is one of the weird things about universities is there's not really this top down pressure necessarily to turn you into a lefty. It kind of just it just happens, you know?
Right. I mean, like I said, I was very economically left wing. So when I went to university, then I was like, yeah, redistribution of wealth, etc. And then everyone's like, no, we don't want to do that. We want to help people cut their dicks off. And I'm like, what? Was kind of like what it was like for me. Um,
Yeah, for me, it was mostly just economic, and same for the people who were sort of political that I associated with. You know, we were kind of just more into like, a little bit of socialism, maybe welfare, healthcare, all of that, taking care of people. All the nice stuff.
yeah, it's and that is something I think that's been really good about Trump is I feel like to a certain extent he's broke or at least led to a questioning of whether or not right wing forces always have to be allied with like capitalism. With
Mm.
I don't necessarily mean capitalism like in a communist sense, but like big companies and kind of the elite, etc. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I'm certainly in favor of a market economy, but I mean like that they have to be like a pawn of big business and they have to do everything to serve the interests of growing the GDP and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's something I see really kind of um being a big topic of discussion on the right now too, is sort of like the nation versus the economy, like nationalism versus capitalism. For me, and this is one of the things I like about Trump is, I think ultimately the economy has to serve the nation. And I am more, I'm very for free markets, but at the end of the day, the nation has to come first. And we don't have to ideologically obsessively align ourselves with these big companies just because.
Well, big companies are very liberal, which I think people have this bizarre idea that companies are right wing. I don't know where it comes from. But if you look at who most companies donate to, and you look at how most companies vote and the sort of values that they promote, companies are very left wing. I think it's because the left has this pathology where they have to always be the underdog. Like, even when they've taken control of every like social institution, they still have to somehow be the underdog who's fighting to get the meat removed from the um cafeteria or whatever.
Right. I get that too. I mean, I definitely, it feels cool somehow to be the underdog, which I think we legitimately are. I don't know how you feel about that, but
No, that's an objective fact though.
yeah, it feels cool to be like fighting a battle that you don't really have any business winning, but you're gonna try anyway.
Well, let's do a test. Would it be illegal? Okay, so it's basically probably illegal in my country to say what I say on my channel. Would it be illegal here to say like what some like radical feminist or like Black Lives Matter person would say? No, that's not illegal. Even if they openly advocate for violence, that's not illegal. It's not even illegal to join ISIS. You can get away with that. But saying mean things on the internet is just where it stops.
Yeah, and that stuff's getting really crazy in the United Kingdom right now. I don't know if it's that bad in Canada.
The government's more incompetent here.
Okay. But almost daily now, I just see some absurd Twitter post where the police are just arresting you for saying something mean. I saw one the other day where like a mother got arrested in front of her children or something like that. It's insane.
All these people are saying bad, like they're hurting people's feelings on the internet. We can't allow that to happen. It's okay if they rape our children, just so long as their feelings don't get hurt because of some guy on YouTube.
That's actually a bit related to how I ended up in the reactionary camp because one of the things that started pulling me away from the left was the whole migrant crisis thing. Like I'm an American, we've been in Iraq a long time, killing a lot of Muslims. So if they try to attack us or something, you could kind of understand why people would want to do that. Not that
Yeah,
it's justified, but I think it was the Nice attack in 2015 where like something like 100 French people were killed by Islamic terrorists. And
right. When they bombed all the nightclubs.
yeah, or it might have been the Bataclan. I don't. There were several of them, and that's what really did me in. And I was just like, what is going on here? Why are French people getting murdered by Islamic extremists.
No, like the
Like,
countries that have done everything possible to pander to these people, and
right,
they
right.
still like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so like that was sort of the first wedge, the first chip at the first crack in my worldview. And it's like once that little crack started, eventually everything just kind of breaks down. And I think that's true for a lot of people. Is there was just one little thing that really made a chip in the armor, and for me, it was that Nice attack. It was so impactful. I can remember exactly where I was, what I was doing, what I was thinking, because there was this moment in time where like something just like snapped or shifted in my brain that fundamentally changed how I saw the world. A really interesting phenomena that I imagine is familiar to a lot of people in these circles.
Yeah. So okay, so let's go back. So you were in university. So how did you kind of feel that? Okay, so just maybe go on a bit more about how that affected you politically. Like, what kind of was this everybody you met like really like super left wing in university or?
Not really. I mean, it only
Okay.
kind of drastically, like I said, I went to a sort of atypical school.
Right. Okay. Okay.
It really wasn't university that affected me much politically. I think it was more the kind of like documentaries and stuff I would watch on like Netflix and stuff. Just kind of being a person interested in ideas. I would watch, Netflix docs on like fossil fuels and this sort of stuff and various wars, and they're all invariably left wing biased. And then I
Mhm.
would watch some YouTube videos. Like I watched the New Atheists quite a bit in 2015, and all of that combined just sort of puts this pressure on you that brings you more to the left. Although I never really thought of myself as someone of the left. I thought myself as sort of an independent centrist. And that's mostly because of the whole. I had that thing where I kind of realized the whole uniparty phenomenon, where like, I don't like the Dems or the Republicans. In 2016, I was basically planning on just not voting because I was like, both of these parties are awful, and that's pretty much where I was. Although my policy preferences were kind of left wing, I would say in retrospect, I wasn't like for the Democrats or anything like that.
Right. Something I think that did a lot of damage to conservatism was I think Bush like really did a huge amount of like decade long
I
damage
agree. Yeah.
with the Iraq war because I don't know how you feel about it, but
So the Iraq War is actually pretty strongly related to my sort of political journey because I
right.
watched this really excellent documentary that I have to recommend called "Losing Iraq" on PBS, and it sort of went over in a very objective way the entire Iraq War and basically what happened. And you know, I sort of came to realize, Bush made a huge mistake getting involved in this war and handled it very, very badly. But towards the end of it, towards the end of the surge, things were actually cooling down a bit and it's starting to get handled. And then when Obama came in, he basically ruined everything and put us right back to where we were before. So I entered this state of mind where I kind of realized that both of these presidents were just terrible for the country in their own ways, and that I can't really trust the system anymore. These guys, these oligarchs have hijacked the country. Basically, democracy is meaningless at this point. Why even bother voting? Maybe the Democrats are a little better because the Republicans were such clowns and the Bush era. But either way, it kind of didn't really matter to me. That's kind of where it was at. I was just like done with it all.
I think a lot of people were just tired of constantly invading random countries. And they're just like, oh, man, Obama says he doesn't want to. And then Obama wound up invading more countries than Bush did.
Well, right. That's one of the reasons I voted for Obama in 2012. Was this whole like end the Iraq War thing, and he just never did. So I was just like, well, what's even the point anymore? Our vote is completely meaningless.
And I'm not even like I'm fine like using violence to resolve problems. You have to, but the issue is there was no moral nor real politic reason like benefit to invading Iraq. Like it did not help America in any way. I think invading Saudi Arabia probably would have done more good, honestly, in the long run. But yeah,
Yeah, towards the end of the war, there's just no justification, and Obama could have just ended it like he said he was going to, and he had 8 years to do it, and he did not. So I became totally disillusioned with the left, sort of from their own behavior, which I think happened for a lot of people. But I think a lot of people couldn't complete the journey because they couldn't accept Trump for what he was. They couldn't, I guess, take the glasses off and really see him for what he was. They were too propagandized already. But for myself, I didn't have that effect where I just sort of followed the narrative. I actually investigated him, and that is kind of what brought me to the right.
Right. So you said that Mencius Moldbug was kind of the first. Did you discover him before or after Trump?
I discovered him in late 2017, actually.
Oh,
So
okay. Wow,
yeah,
you're much newer to this than I am.
yeah, indeed. So I actually started reading Moldbug, I think in like October or September 2017, simultaneous to a time when I was planning a sort of like pilgrimage, a very patriotic pilgrimage to Washington, D.C. And I read Moldbug's open letter like just a few weeks before I went to Washington, D.C., and I stayed there for 2 weeks. And it had a really interesting effect on my trip there because instead of having a sort of like religious patriotic pilgrimage, I sort of had this like almost museum like experience where I was examining like the relics of this lost civilization, this mythology, almost as if I was visiting like Rome or something, and I was kind of more there as an observer of this history that Moldbug described to me, as opposed to what like your normie patriot would feel. So that was really interesting in of itself, and that's what really hooked me.
Right. I really liked DC when I went there. To be honest, I've been there a couple times.
It's a beautiful city. I mean, it's really hard to describe how incredible it is to walk around the National Mall and just be in the face of all these incredible monuments to your nation.
I don't know if you. I know something I find that is kind of sometimes sets me apart a bit in these circles is I really like America. And I find a lot of people in these circles tend to take the like eternal Anglo blame the U.S. for everything.
Yeah, I don't really feel that at all. I mean, I, I guess you have to differentiate between America and like the cabal that has captured America, I think.
Yeah, but like, there's a lot of people, and maybe this is a good. So, like, as far as kind of because you would consider yourself to be mainly a reactionary, right?
Yeah, specifically neo-reactionary.
Okay, so like, how do you answer kind of? I know I'm jumping around a lot. Kind of the
That's fine.
criticism that America is a liberal country founded on Enlightenment values, and it was just a mistake.
Well, it's really not. I mean, if you can, I mean, it's set right there in the Constitution, in the preamble, who the country is for. We know that the country was founded as a republic, not specifically democratic. Uh, I would maybe you could say it was founded on liberal values at the time, but it certainly wasn't founded on the values we currently associate with liberalism. I think it's clear that the liberalism that America was founded on, if that's what you want to call it, is far right compared to what we have today. So it's really not an argument for modern day liberalism to say that America was founded as a liberal nation.
Right, and I find people can. I'm sorry if I'm using this term. Get a little autistic with the whole um every aspect of I don't know if the Enlightenment or just kind of modern politics is bad. Like I don't really get why having a constitution is so bad.
I am, I mean, I could not overstate how thrilled I am to have a constitution because it is the only reason that America is not the total clown world that like the UK is or Canada is right now, like we talked about before. Like the value of the First and Second Amendments cannot possibly be overstated. Those those two sentences have done more work than I can put into words to in stopping our country from just completely collapsing.
Well, and this is something I say because a lot of people I find in these circles. I'm sorry if I'm going to be taking shots at a lot of the community, but we're like, "Oh, Trump is like he's bad. We can't vote for him. He said grab them in the pussy. He's not like I don't know reactionary enough." But as I said, if all Trump did was appoint Supreme Court justices who didn't find a hate speech clause in the Constitution, that alone would make his election worthwhile.
Yeah, we're very much in agreement there, and I'm happy to take shots for this. It really pisses me off when people um, refuse to support Trump. You know, it's fine to criticize him, but refuse to get on board with him just because he's not far right enough. It's like Trump is so much more than we deserve. We've let things degenerate to such an extreme degree. You know, we don't even deserve someone who's willing to do the stuff he's willing to do. It's it's hard to overstate just how amazing of a president he has been. Easily the best in the 20th century. There's not even a question about it. You know, is he perfect? No. Has he gone back on a lot of his promises? Sure, but I mean, when you look at it in a more objective view, it's like, how could you possibly say that this is not so much better than you could possibly have hoped for? And I think we need to try and see him through to a second term and use this time very wisely to figure out what we're building for the future, because Trump is only going to be there as a sort of roadblock for 6 more years at the most, and that's a big problem for us on the right. But yeah, I think all of this hand wringing nonsense about Trump this, Trump that, it's just stupid. It's not appreciative enough of the chance that's been offered to us here.
Because I mean, and this is a point I make to a lot of people in other countries, like myself, where they'll say, "Well, you're Canadian or you're French or you're German or whatever. Why should we care about the Supreme Court?" Because most tech companies are based in the US. Almost all of them are. And as bad as they are at the moment, and they are bad, imagine if Google was based in China or Facebook was based in China or any of these other like social media conglomerates were based in China where there was not even like a anything to try to protect free speech. Things would be way worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that is something people should realize, is that the battle is very much in the United States, especially in the Western Hemisphere. In Europe, Europe can kind of go its own way, but just because of the power of the United States and the modern world, what happens here really matters for all of the other right wing movements in all other countries. So that's why you should be concerned. And I don't think Americans should be mad that foreigners are concerned about the state of their country, because it really matters, especially to us on the right.
Right, because like I said, a lot of the right-wing movements around the world would be very badly hurt if America passed hate speech laws.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would pretty much all get deplatformed. Just referring to something somebody said in the chat, how I kind of feel about the American Constitution is it is I guess you could say it was a tradition that was kind of invented, I guess, if you want to say that, but it's become very sacred to the people of the United States. It's become as deeply held as a lot of other traditions in other societies. The fact that the US has had the same constitution when most countries will rewrite theirs every like 10 years, and that people are willing to die for it and have such reverence for it, I think does make supporting it kind of a form of traditionalism, if I'm making sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of military people see it that way. I more or less take the Moltbuggian living constitution view. I mean, I think the constitution is kind of just a little formality at this point that's not really well respected. But that's not to say that it's not valuable. Um, but it's clearly not enough in of itself. But it is part of the American mythology, and mythology is important.
Right. Well, it is a core part of your country's identity. I think another thing, and this is an issue often, just on the whole topic of anti-Americanism. There's this idea that social liberalism comes from America, but America is also probably the most religious of, like, I don't know how you want to describe it, like Western Europe and North America, that kind of part of the world. I'm not counting Eastern Europe, but like Western Europe and North America, I'd say it is much more religious than anywhere in in Western Europe.
That is true. I think Moldbug has a good analysis of this in that a lot of progressive values come from the sort of Calvinist Christians that you see here. So I'm not sure that that necessarily is a counterpoint to it. Although I feel like I need to do more research in the ultra Calvinist theory before I necessarily say that it really does stem from more from Christianity than anything else. But I think there is a clear line that he points out between modern day progressivism and the type of Christianity we have in America. I mean, it's right. I mentioned this in my last video. It's right there in our Declaration of Independence. That all men are created equal. You know, that's a very Christian value. That's not evidenced by the sort of modern day atheism and scientism we see.
Right. And I think the other thing is, yeah, it's sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but it's kind of something. As being an Anglo myself, I kind of get tired of the whole eternal Anglo thing, because why is it never the eternal Franco or the eternal crowd?
Yeah, it is annoying. And I will say, in the post World War II era, America is incredibly responsible for exporting social liberalism.
No, that's
Yeah,
true.
like that's absolutely, as far as enforcing that world order, it's all on us basically because we were the only ones left.
Yeah, but like, to be semi-fair to America, a lot of that was because Europe kept spurging out every 20 years and
Yeah.
like starting cataclysmic world wars. I kind of feel like the EU and the UN and a lot of that stuff was kind of America, just like, we don't want to come back here every 20 years to like to keep fixing shit. So I'm a little sympathetic to that.
Yeah, it makes sense, and it is exactly what we tried between the world wars, and it didn't work that time. And so I think you could make that argument. I mean, America clearly drives those sort of multinational organizations, and obviously they were created to prevent more world wars. Now, whether or not the U.S. really should be involved in those things, that's up for debate. Especially in the First World War. I mean, obviously in the second one we got attacked, so there you go. But I don't know. I don't have strong feelings about that either way. I find World War One really interesting, and I think Americans should aid in defending Western civilization. World War One's kind of weird because it's kind of hard to figure out who's really the bad guy there, and it kind of feels like we sort of stepped into somebody else's fight. And
I kind of view it as just kind of a dick waving contest where that wasn't really. I am kind of also unusual in these circles that I don't really like Hitler or the Nazi Party very much.
I mean, yeah, this how you can think that's a good idea to me is just mind-boggling. I
I mean,
mean,
I like Franco a lot, and I even like Mussolini, but I
well,
don't.
it's just right there. I mean, Hitler was the biggest failure ever, and he basically spurred out on his own nation, right? Like, if you read actual World War II histories, like Hitler was insane, absolutely insane. Nazism was also very much Hitlerism. It's almost impossible to even separate Nazism from Hitler just because of how deeply it was an expression of his twisted mind. I just don't understand.
I think he was definitely a very, and he had very good intuition and a very good understanding of his rivals. The thing that I
Mhm.
think people are unfair about is they kind of will, and I get it's because the Allies wound up winning and they wound up bringing about a paused world, etc. But like, people will criticize the UK for not making peace and that kind of thing, and Germany did invade a whole bunch of countries, and they did kind of do everything to appease them, and they just kept invading countries
Well,
and
yeah, and like
spreading
the
war.
reason they finally went to war is because of a treaty with Poland. Like they had a defense treaty with Poland. Are they supposed to just ignore it? I mean,
Well, no, it's because I've met people who have defended, who will call modern day Poles who hate Germany cucks, who don't appreciate what Hitler brought them, what Hitler did for them. Um,
yeah, I mean Hitler basically set the right back in the world in Europe, especially by like I don't know 100 years. I mean, we're gonna spend our entire lifetimes probably cleaning up after him still.
and I'm not someone who even disliked fascism. Like I thought Franco was really good. I thought Antonio Salazar was really good.
I need to study Franco more, and yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I mean, that's kind of the unfortunate thing is fascism is a system of government that never really got a chance. And I think you really have to separate fascism from Nazism because, like I said, what happened in Nazi Germany was very much an expression of Hitler's personality and
Mhm.
not intrinsic to fascism. And fascist Italy basically became a puppet state of Nazi Germany and adopted all of their anti-Jewish policies and all that stuff. And it, I don't think it got a fair representation, and I think it's definitely preferable to communism.
It's the thing I think people have to understand about fascism is because it's a right wing movement. It's very very dependent on the host culture.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
because like in some cases like Romania it was religious in nature. In some cases it was Protestant, and in Norway it was neo-pagan.
Yeah, this is
uh
something Evola talks about actually.
yeah, like because it's interesting because there's religious and non-religious forms of fascism. Like Japanese fascism was expressly anti-religious. Something interesting is when state Shinto was established, they deliberately destroyed the religious aspects of Shinto to make it just a form of radical Japanese nationalism.
Now,
Um,
I think there is a good argument against fascism, though, in how imperialistic it is. It's possible. I mean, that's a very globalist mindset. I think nations should not interfere and not try to conquer with other nations, especially. And that's something that Mussolini sort of set out to do in his original doctrine. So I think fascism has a lot of problems, but if it could be cleaned up potentially and used as a better system of government.
it's my issue is I just don't really like totalitarian societies because I think they're corrupt and thuggish
Yeah, I
uh,
agree, and I
as a
think
general rule.
fascism probably is more likely to turn into that. I It's interesting too if you read some philosophers who are more or less in that vein, like Evola. He actually criticizes the totalitarian nature of fascism very strongly, and I think that's something that people need to separate in their heads: is that fascism is not the same thing as totalitarianism.
It's to my mind, and kind of how I describe fascism is I think it was an attempt to create a syncretic ideology between reactionary and progressive thought. The
Mm,
term
yeah,
that's often used to it is reactionary modernism, which is kind of how I describe myself, to be honest. But it was kind of taking a lot of really like futurism very quickly became a fascist art movement, and you had these very strong aspects of kind of both within it. It was I think to a certain extent it was a reaction against communism, modern liberalism, and that sort of thing.
yeah, and if you read the Doctrine of Fascism by Gentile and Mussolini, this idea of progress is sort of baked into it. So I think that's a good analysis.
And it's and this is kind of an issue. I mean, it depends on the type of different what your brand of reactionary is, etc. But I kind of I don't my issue with kind of some of the more, I don't know if you want to call it LARP or whatever, but like neo-primitivists or that kind of thing, or like distributism, is I just don't think a society based on that way would be able to defend itself
Hmm.
against a more centralized industrialized society.
Yeah, that makes sense.
which is kind of my issue with it a bit. But no, back to just what I was saying. No, it's interesting because some forms of fascism, like Japanese and Arab fascism, were non-religious or even anti-religious, and then like Romanian fascism and Slovakian fascism were, and Austro-fascism were all very religious in nature. It really, I think, depended a lot on the host culture.
It really does. I think fascism is definitely something that is worth studying, worth looking at. I wouldn't recommend it, and personally, being someone who's more of like a who came from more of like a libertarian type mindset, it's kind of hard for me to want to endorse. But I could understand why people on the right do want to go in that direction, and I don't think it's evil or something. I think Nazism is obviously evil and a bad idea, but fascism more generally is could be reasonable.
Well, here's someone said is, even if we accept everything Hitler said about the Jews, that wouldn't justify what they did to the handicapped people.
Yeah, that's a good way of phrasing it.
No, like even if you like, my issue with it is the willingness to throw your own people under the bus just because they aren't perfect. And I guess as a Christian, that really bothers me.
Yeah, it's very hyper materialist.
But like of the governments today, what I kind of like is like maybe a one party or at least just a dominant party state that has kind of a big tent right wing party. So like I think the best run countries I'd say are like Poland, Hungary, and to a certain extent Russia.
The thing about Hitler and Nazism as well is like, look at how far he got. He got everything he wanted. He got the unified Germany, and then he still kept going for more. It's like you can't justify invading Poland, attacking Russia, and all of this stuff. It's just ridiculous, and that's what he planned on doing from the get go. This was all
To a certain extent with Russia. I think the fear was the Soviet Union was industrializing, and if they didn't just defeat them,
Oh no, from a military analysis perspective, the attack actually makes a lot more sense than people want to give it credit for. But of course, the reason that Hitler wanted to invade Russia was just for German living space, Lebensraum, which is, I just can't justify stealing another people's country like that.
I think one of the single biggest problems in why Barbarossa failed was they weren't willing enough to work with minorities who hated the Soviet Union.
I don't know about that. I mean, in the Caucasus, I believe there were a lot of divisions formed completely of Italians, some even Russians, who fought against the Soviets. Unless you're talking about stirring up more,
I think I'm talking more in like the Ukraine.
Mm.
Because I know Heinz Guderian said we lost the war the day we didn't raise the Ukrainian flag above the cathedrals in Kiev.
That's interesting. I didn't know about that quote.
Yeah, which is but yeah, I'd say of the countries at the moment, I really like Hungary and Poland. I think they have a really good system because they're very right wing, but they aren't really thuggish, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They seem to have really well-run societies that are safe and good for everyone to live in, and that's really what a nation should be.
Mm-hmm. So let's see here. Somebody, I'm just looking at what people are saying in the chat. So who are kind of some other, I don't know, people in these circles that you like or that were kind of influences on you?
Well, I spent like a good portion of last week binge watching True Deal Tom, who's really interesting. Um, I followed the Distributist for a while. I followed Academic Agent for a while. Let's see. I started subscribing to Stefan Molyneux, funnily enough. I listened to a lot of I watch Vox Day's Dark Stream pretty much every day. I found Black Pilled recently, subscribed to Ramsey Paul. Let's see.
Ramsey Paul's kind of the gold standard.
Yeah, he makes good videos. I really like the morning Ramsey Paul video. A couple of years ago, I was more into. I watched a lot of alt-right content. I was never alt-right at all, and wasn't I was even watching a lot of alt-right content even when I was more in my like classical liberal phase, just because I was kind of just interested in what they were saying. And channels like the Alternative Hypothesis can make some good points. Millennial Woes is always very fun to watch. He did a very good video yesterday, I think. Uh, of course, before all of that, I was watching, like Sargon of Akkad and V and Steven Crowder and these people who sort of generally start pulling you into the politics from the centrist, basic side.
Okay, so as someone who used to watch Sargon, I'm interested in your perspective. So I always felt that he's the kind of guy that what is it again? Um that he's the kind of man who's at war with himself. I kind of feel like to a certain extent he might more kind of agree with us than he lets on. But because of the audience he's built and because of kind of his circle, he's just kind of trapped there.
That's interesting. That could explain something I've noticed recently that I find very odd. The fact that Sargon of Akkad does not seem to have changed at all in the last several years as far as his opinions, which I find really weird as someone whose ideology has flipped seriously at least like once a year at this point, um, to the point of being like pretty far reactionary. I don't really understand how one could just sit there and just be in this stagnant, classically liberal phase. Like, let me just read my John Locke for eternity. I don't really get it, and I think that although it's kind of a conspiracy theory type thing, that could be an explanation for that.
Right. Yeah, I find V really obnoxious. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, yeah, V's a cool guy and all, but like, just the whole like laughing at feminists and feminist frequency and blah blah blah. Like, those guys are still just stuck in the Gamergate phase. They can't get out of it. And well, I mean, if you get entertainment out of watching it, great, but it's not really going to do much for us on actually making any progress. And that's
Mhm.
not to denigrate what Sargon is doing. I think it's really cool that he's giving speeches and traveling, and I think we need to follow that model. I don't have anything against him. I just think that that's completely insufficient. We've gone down the rabbit hole, down the slippery slope way too far at this point for just this basic bitch conservatism. That's why I'm a reactionary.
Right. You probably don't know who he is. It's not real. I don't know like why. I don't even know what that's a reference to. But I don't know. I've always been very, very strong about against swatting. I think swatting is
Uh,
really bad if for no other reason than it wastes the police's time. It's not the way you deal. It's just I'm very strongly against it.
well, also people can get killed doing that. I mean,
No, people can get killed. It's a way. It's a form of like attempting to kill somebody. It's just I don't know. I really dislike swatting. I don't. The only time, just on the subject, I approve of doxing is if it's to the police as opposed to the public, and if the person committed an actual crime.
yeah, that's one of the weird things about these internet circles is like doxing itself isn't immoral. Like, there are reasons to expose people, like if they committed a felony or something like that. Uh, but obviously it's not right to just go around doing it randomly for the lulz.
Okay, apparently, sorry, I'm getting distracted by this. Apparently, Yanduri Dev said I wasn't the one who swatted him. I don't even know where the fuck he lives, and I don't know. The whole swatting thing is just
Yeah, that's one thing. That's one really weird thing that happens in YouTube, I guess, is all of these. Everyone always thinks everyone else is doing like gay ops against them, and it's like we're kind of just doing our own thing for the most part. We don't have time to run around trying to form conspiracies against each other. I mean, obviously some people do that, but yeah, there's. I don't think there's really that much going on behind the scenes.
well. What kind of happens to a lot of people, and I find the one of the most common things that brings people down is kind of a sunk cost fallacy when it comes to drama. They just have to get in the last word, and they just have to win, even when uh even when it's obvious that they're losing and things are going really bad. I don't know. Do you know Irini at all, or know of Irini at all?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Is
Uh,
that an older YouTuber?
yes. Okay, but like with Sargon, his whole like self-destruction involving Jim, like why he thought it was a good idea to pick a fight with Jim and to call him a pedo. I don't know if you remember that.
Uh, was that last year?
Yeah, he did this stream called Hello Jim, and the whole thing was calling
Oh,
Jim a pedophile.
I watched that after the fact. I didn't catch it live, but yeah, that's one of the things that really kind of made me become disinterested in Sargon. Is I just don't understand why he picks these stupid fights with people, especially like you said with Jim of all people.
Hmm. Um, yeah, it's just like there's I don't know like why he thought it was a good idea. Like it didn't accomplish anything. Like he completely uh what was I gonna say again? He completely just screwed the pooch on that one. Like there was no reason to start a beef with Jim. It completely undermined his whole joining UKIP thing.
Mm,
Um I don't think like because I don't think anyone really cared that he joined UKIP. I think
yeah, I
people
think
cared that he was a smug cunt about it, frankly.
one of the things that I've noticed has happened is like Sargon is always like, I'm gonna start doing things and be better and make better videos and stuff, but then he always just falls back into this e-drama stuff, and it's like, why are you attacking Mr. Medicare? He's completely irrelevant to your political aims. Like he's just a drama channel, and like
Mhm.
that's fine, but attacking Medicare is pointless. And if Medicare is attacking you, who cares? Like it's not gonna do anything. Like go do your politics stuff if you're serious about it, and if not, stop pretending to be.
Right. It's yeah, like he tried to make it into like people are mad at me because I joined UKIP, and I don't think anyone cared that he joined UKIP until he like his retarded. I joined it so I could say I'm part of a political party. When SJWs say they're part of labor, so
Yeah, I don't really see the point, and yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that he hasn't leveraged his influence to a greater extent. I think that meme where the Sargon is the Reaper and he knocks on the doors and like he's just like murdering the next movement. I think that's very much true. I don't think like he's gonna destroy UKIP or something. But it's he just doesn't. He never really brings it. He just kind of flounders around.
do you notice he just leaves every movement he becomes a part of?
Yeah, what is up with that? Like liberalists, he seems to barely do anything with UKIP if he's even still in them officially.
Gamergate 2.0.
Yeah. Oh, that was so cringy. When I remember when they tried to start Gamergate 2, it's like, what are you guys doing? We already did this. Like, they're just stuck in the past.
It's I thought it was really funny. They this Sargon impersonator went on the Ralph retort, and he was like they basically were like explaining how like retarded Gamergate 2 was, and he said, I'm trolling, I'm just trolling you. I'm trolling. That kind of thing. Which is kind of how it went.
Yeah, I guess nowhere is where that went. It went straight to Cringe Town.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think Sargon has been important to getting people interested in politics at least, and that's something. I mean, you have to at least respect the guy for building up an audience, but you don't have to uh, approve of many of the other things he does.
Hmm. Anyways, man, I think that covers most of what I wanted to talk about. Did you have any kind of concluding thoughts?
Um, well, I appreciate you having me on. It's fun to talk to other people in the circles. I kind of we didn't really go too far into my backstory on
Oh,
vet school.
sorry.
No, it's fine. I was kind of hoping to just have more of a conversation, and
Okay, well, you can come on again sometime and we'll talk a bit more about that then.
yeah, that would be fun. I guess before we go, I want to tell this little anecdote
Sure,
that
be my guest.
happened to me today. As I was driving home, right? So, and because the stream's about like why am I reactionary, and I feel like this little story really encapsulates it. So, I'm on the road, I'm in traffic, stopped at a red light, car pulls up behind me, right, or next to me, and they're playing really loud, rap music or whatever, and I can hear the lyrics. And do you mind if I curse?
Oh, I don't care.
Okay, so like the lyrics were the rapper or singer or whatever, he was saying I I like to fuck you in public, and she said me too, right? Like, and I was just like, what the hell am I listening to? Is this what people listen to now? They listen to songs about people having sex in public, and there were girls in the song or in the car like singing along with it, and I was just like, how the hell has society gotten to a point where we have people making songs about public sex and people are just like happily singing along to this stuff? It's
Hmm.
just, it's a complete, it actually like, it really disgusts me to hear this stuff because, and not from like some squeamish or religious or perspective like that, but just like how disrespectful it is to really to our partners in life, women, to make this song talking about having sex with them in public and then having the audacity to narrate her also wanting this. And then you're selling this to women and they're listening to it and you're acting like this is a good thing. It drives me crazy to watch how like I guess my fellow males like just feed into this terrible degeneracy problem that we have now. I think you see a lot of people online sort of complain about hookup culture and Tinder and like the problem with modern women and stuff. And I think that's a really bad way of looking at things. I think we really need to be thinking about um, how as individuals we can be excellent ourselves. Like as men, we really need to try and be excellent and embody what we want to see in the world from a more traditional perspective and just totally reject the stuff. Don't listen to music like that. Don't watch media like that. Just stay away from that stuff. And then you can help build a society where you can find people who can be your partners in life who aren't also engaged in this stuff. I think that's really important to keep in mind. Just how much each of us can do in our own lives to hopefully build some sort of foundation for something in the future. So that's my little tale there.
Okay, thank you very much. Great having you on. I'll have you on again sometime if you'd like.
Sure, it would be fun. It was fun chatting.
Okay, so everybody, I have a link to his channel below. Please subscribe and watch his content. It's excellent. And have a good Friday, everybody, and a good weekend.